Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Brandon. So I'm going to talk about one of the subjects that kind of spooks me to talk about, and you'll understand why here as I get into this. It's not so much about the threat from other people, even though that threat does exist. It's more about, um, well, let's just jump into it and you'll see what I mean. So uh, I come from a family who kind of, especially my mom's side of the family, kind of prides themselves on finding um, flaw with others when others are lying. Like, we're very good lie detectors. We're very good at figuring out when people are up to no good. And when technically people think we would never figure it out. So people who are very good liars, who are very good at deceiving other people, they're very taken back by the fact that we can see through the fact that they're lying before we even understand what their motive is. And then we can piece it all together after the fact. So the point is, let's just jump into this. Let's say that certain elites were lying to the masses on some pretty important topics, like let's say living longer was possible, okay? And let's say that those elites were lying to the masses. Well, one might assume that, oh, they're evil to do that. We need to expose the truth and things will be better. Likewise, I'm going to use another instance, which I believe falls in the same category here in a second. Let's say that the elites were using a mechanism, a quote unquote financial mechanism involving the banking industry and many other little things that all accumulate. And let's say that they knew that naturally there was going to be deflation due to invention, which means like older microchips become dirt cheap because you already have the tooling, and older cars become dirt cheap because you already have the tooling, so on and so forth, if you don't destroy that tooling. And let's say that they knew that deflation was going to occur, and they knew that that was going to always put banks into a horrible spot who give loans on houses and cars and so many other things because of this quote unquote deflation. Population rising causes deflation. If you have a fixed amount of money, the money becomes worth more and more and more as time goes by because you have a limited quantity of money. And since deflation hurts that person who has to repossess an item and then take it to auction and sell it, because now it's worth less money than it was when the loan was taken out, that's not in banks' favors. So lenders need there to always be inflation. And the more the better, because then when they take something to auction, the more that they get out of the item when they go to sell it. So this can be used as a mechanism to quote unquote take over the world if you're the banks, because it's to your advantage when people default on their loans, and you can instigate bad days, put options in the markets, make profit on the way down when the markets tumble and specific businesses tumble. So you put moles into businesses, crash businesses. But the point is, let's get back to the original topic. Let's say that there's a person who's capable of seeing through the lies and knows what the quote unquote truth is, and wants to expose the truth to the masses. The elites have created the category of the quote unquote antichrist, and they have all these History Channel documentaries that were always blaring through the 2000s and 2010s and everything. They've kind of simmered down a little bit, but back then they were really strong, and they basically said, you know, the guy's going to be all about fairness, and he's going to be trying to make life fair, even though life can't be made fair. To me, that was always like, the guy's going to be trying to make cars faster, even though cars can't become indefinitely fast. There's always going to be a slow relative to something else. The same is the concept of fair. Just because you can't make things perfectly fair, just like you can't make a car perfectly fast, there's always going to be a faster car invented. Okay, and then the old car is going to be slow relative to the faster car. Fairness is the same concept, but just because you can't make something perfectly fair doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing as you repay the favor to those who made life more fair before us. So the reason why we're not all getting shot up and barbaric stuff as soon as we walk outside, and the reason why we have, people who go to work and expect a paycheck and have rules of conduct at work is because we have pursued fairness. We try to establish rules that make life more and more fair, right? So life as we know it is currently based on a certain level of fairness. So to me, it was always like, where are these fucking people coming up with this shit about making life more fair is a bad thing? Making life fair is what's got us as far as we've gotten. But I really combine when you combine the bad feeling that I had in my stomach that if I release this technology that I have, and also just combine the worry that I wasn't ready as a person yet, and then you see the agenda of hyperinflation. In 2018, that Janice Yellen lady, she was out at Jackson Hole in Wyoming, and it was a known fact. People were reporting on the fact that she was, trying to start inflation. The whole meeting was, how do we create inflation? And not even 2 years later, you have COVID. Okay, so which created more inflation than ever before in human history. So the banks need there to be inflation for them to make more profit. The more inflation, the more profitable the banks become, and that's a fact. The banks are turning in record profits right now. So back to the original topics of this video was living longer, and it being kept secret that it's possible, as well as financial stuff being kept secret that there's another way that benefits the masses more. So you would think, okay, Brandon, if you understand these two things, yell them from the top of the mountain and explain it to everybody, and you'll go down in history as the big hero if your stuff can be proven true. If your system works and all this stuff works, it's all going to be fantastic. The issue is, I'm going to ask a question. It's a really profound question. What if there are lies and secrets concerning the topic of living longer? There's lies and secrets intentionally being kept from the masses of how easy it is to live longer. And what if the truth causes society to not just go downward at some sort of steady pace, but totally collapse? Like, we're talking EMP shockwaves, electronics are fried, networks are fried, the internet no longer works. Any website you go to, it just says, sorry, can't be found, data server down, blah, blah, blah. What happens when you can't go to the bank and withdraw money? What happens when all of a sudden you're just in a really bad spot? Think about how bad things would get after 1 week of that, 2 weeks of that, 3 weeks of that, 5 weeks of that. So it would become total anarchy, total chaos. So I've talked about how super weapons can lead to the earth being destroyed, right? And why it's important to keep that stuff off limits. Now, the next problem is there are already in existence tens of thousands of nukes. The Tooth Fairy didn't bring them. The Fairy Godmother didn't bring them. Tinkerbell didn't bring them. They were built by humans. And like it or not, when the world goes into anarchy, those humans who know how to build those things are still in existence. The humans who guard those things, who have the ability to make them go missing, exist. So the point is, I'm just going to give you a for instance scenario. Let's say there's a guy who is in the military, whatever, and he guards nukes, whether it's for the United States or Russia or Pakistan or wherever the fuck, right? And let's say that it becomes common knowledge that people can live longer, like double their age, and they remain 20 to 30 years old for a very long time. Like, when you look at them, they appear to be 20 to 30 years old. And let's say that that person who has access to the nukes knows that he and or his children who are dying of some crazy disease, or his parents, his family, everybody in his family is dying, and he doesn't like that. And let's say he knows he's dead anyway. He's out of money. He knows he's going to starve. So he basically knows, okay, I've got access to these weapons. So he rigs these weapons up in multiple locations around the globe, just goes and kind of plants them around the globe, and puts them all on timers. And then he makes a YouTube video and he says, hey guys, I'm so-and-so from Pakistan, or I'm so-and-so from Russia, or I'm so-and-so from the United States. Here's my military badge clearance. I had access to guard all these weapons. I had access to the weapons. I went and hid them all over the place, and I put them on timers. And these are the big ones. These are the ones that take chunks out of the earth if they go off. It's probably also going to start the other people to do what I've done as well if these go off. So my demand is you either give me this longer life stuff, or else I know I'm dead anyway. I already know my kid's dead anyway. I already know my parents are dead anyway. And they basically roll the dice. They gamble and they say, I don't care. I'm doing this. We all go up in smoke unless you save me. At minimum, by 10 o'clock tonight, I expect there to be a couple $1 million in my bank account. So any billionaire that's currently breathing oxygen on planet Earth, who has residence in these areas where there's these potential hidden weapons, they're going to be wiring the dude the money. They're going to be like, I don't want my fucking mansion to get destroyed. Fuck this asshole. Just give him his fucking money, and then we'll send some assassins to kill his ass in a little bit or something like that. Let's figure out where his nukes are. Let's pacify this guy for a second so that we can figure out where these fucking nukes are, and this guy disarms the nukes, because if we send him the money, he'll disarm the nukes. This is what the elite are genuinely scared of right now. They're not scared of China versus America, and they have all that shit under control. They're scared of what I'm explaining to you right now, okay? All the things that you guys think matter, it's all fucking show, in my opinion. I'm not going to get into it, but the point is this. Let's say that I'm the one who exposes, or anybody for that matter, you or I, are the ones who expose that longer life is not that difficult to achieve as long as you have intelligent people to administer medical treatments to you on a very frequent basis, that you can afford that. And people start to see life as being like this parabolic curve, to where they're like, okay, this guy's able to live to 200. This guy's able to live to 400 within reason. This guy's figured out this problem. This guy's figured out this problem. Guys, in another 50 years, true immortality is going to be possible. And for those of you who don't know, there's immortal jellyfish. There's immortal animals already on this planet. So please don't tell me that it's impossible. It's already scientifically a fact that it exists, okay? Now, I get it. Jellyfish are not human beings, but it's the principle. Don't sit here and pretend that you have it all figured out just because you're fucking ignorant as fuck. So those of you who think that there's not a task force on this topic, I used to be very vocal about this, making fun of how dumb humanity was not to be able to see through and question the stuff about the Harvard mice being kept younger with telomerase being turned back on. And while I was working at just a basic brick and mortar business where I was in a sales position where people could just walk in off the street and ask questions about the products that we were selling, it was a pretty slow business. You'd see maybe each of us who worked there would maybe see a customer, maybe 2 customers a day. It wasn't anything knock your socks off, but you made good money when you make a sale. A gentleman came in. This is fact, guys. I have witnesses to this. My coworkers all saw this. It's silent in the office other than what was being discussed between he and I. And everybody at work knew that I was wanted to talk about this telomerase stuff, okay? I'm going to set this down because I'm tired of holding this fucking radiation device. Everybody who was in the office knew that I was into talking about this telomerase stuff. And I wanted to go back to school for this. And one of my family members who was above me said that I wasn't allowed to go back to school. And at the time, I wanted to please my family member, but I really also wanted to go back to school. And I brought it up on multiple occasions. I was in the state of Florida at the time. And there's some really good universities down there, like Max Planck University and all these different things. I wanted to just go to some university and just be able, it wasn't even about the curriculum. It's about getting around the intelligent people and being able to pick their brains. And every time that I have wanted to make progress on this topic, life, like I'm talking where I actually start to take action and start to like move forward with like, okay, I'm going to make progress in this thing and make headway and figuring this out. The universe puts the biggest fucking hurdles in my way. And see, the thing is about my websites that would generate me a lot of money is it would lead to me then pursuing this topic of potentially living longer. Is it possible? Blah, blah, blah. So back to this guy who came into the showroom. First of all, I pay close attention to people's cars. And when this guy came in, he was driving this older, like late 80s, early 90s, like Buick, Oldsmobile, Cadillac. It was probably a Cadillac, to be honest with you, kind of looking car. But it wasn't a huge one. The car wasn't massive. It had kind of like that dovetail shape. It was just but it was so well kept. To me, it wasn't like a super fancy car. It wasn't like the leader of the pack of its time, but it was just so well kept. It was immaculate. And it was this bluish silver color. I think it was like two-tone blue and silver or something like that, but maybe it was all one color. But the point is, it was immaculate. So the guy comes in. I'm not the first desk by the door. There's 2 desks before me. 2 people before me. So the guy walks in through the doors, and the doors are like in the middle of the front wall. And so there's the first desk to his right, second desk to his right, and I'm third desk. So the guy walks in, acting like he's looking around the place, looks at the first guy, goes back to looking around the place, looks at the second guy, goes back to looking around the place, looks at me, sits down at my desk. And I'm just going to cut to the chase real quick. This guy said that he worked for a Rothschild. And what's interesting is I can't find it on the internet anymore. I used to be able to find where he worked, and now I can't find it. So I understand that there's Rothschild, what do you call it? Investment stuff, okay, money stuff. And maybe my memory is just whack and I don't remember that that's what he said, but I could have sworn that this guy said that he worked for this like research group. And it used to be that I felt like I could find this on the internet. I'm like, aha, that's where the guy worked. Because I felt I wanted to not make it seem like I knew too much about him. I didn't want him to think that I was a threat. Because, okay, within 2 minutes of discussion about why this guy came into this sales facility, okay, to potentially buy something from me as a complete stranger. I just want to be real here for a second. We were within, I'm not exaggerating, I know 2 minutes goes fast. Within 2 to 3 minutes of this guy sitting at my desk, we are talking about telomerase and the mice at Harvard. So I think what it was the way that he introduced himself and talked about medical research and something along those lines. And I said, oh, I'm super fascinated in this stuff and, trying to create common ground and blah, blah, blah. And I said, one of the things that interests me the most is the telomerase and the mice at Harvard. And the guy instantly had a stance. He had a stance on the topic. And he says, yeah, but what you see Harvard do with mice is not possible with humans. And I'm like, I basically just said something along the lines of, I don't understand why human beings in general, like I'm paying the guy a bit of an insult, I guess you'd say. I said, I don't understand why human beings in general can prioritize speculating what Michael Jackson is up to, and can prioritize speculating what, Britney Spears and reality TV shows stars are up to, and can speculate and tinker with making cars faster and engines and how to keep their car immaculately clean and blah, 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 blah. But when it comes time to speculate and daydream and maybe try to feel our way around in the dark about a topic that can make us all live twice as long, everybody wants to shut down the conversation and say it's not possible. It's strange to me how priority number one of our instincts is not priority number one of our conversations. So, whether it's you want to make sure that your mom doesn't die from cancer, or whether you want to make sure that your kids don't die from some disease, or whether it's just, hey, if people are going to end up living longer in the next 100 years, why don't I be part of that breakthrough and be a big hero for humanity, blah, blah, blah. So it was pretty interesting how this guy was just so against the topic right away. And I'm pretty good at knowing when people want there to be, what do you call it? I'm pretty good at knowing when people want me to divulge what I know. So it's like they kind of challenge me, like they'll say something that we both know isn't true, hoping that then I counter them and get into what I know. But the fact that this guy explained to me that he was with a Rothschild group, an organization from up north, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, wait a second. First of all, why is this guy in Florida? Okay? Because this was in like West Palm Beach, Florida area when this happened. I'm like, okay, why is this guy in Florida, first and foremost? Why is this guy driving this old car that's pristine? So it's almost like the guy doesn't drive a lot of miles, okay? Because otherwise that car would be broken down by now. Why did this guy walk into this showroom, if you will, and not talk to either of those two people and sits down and starts talking to me? Why is he so opinionated on, what do you call it? Telomerase and living longer? Like, what is this dude's agenda right now? And as I started to realize that what I had to say was the total opposite of what he wanted reality to be, I stopped talking so much about the subject. I just kind of played stupid, that I didn't know anything else. And really, long story short, once he, in my opinion, my observation, once he was convinced that I didn't know anything else, he left. So call him a spy, call him an investigator, whatever you want to call him. And by the way, the guy was like, he portrayed himself almost like a janitor, like a nobody in this organization. But what's interesting is, as I've thought about this, I'm like, let's say the guy was telling the truth and he really was a janitor, and that's why he's got the old car, and that's why he keeps it so clean, and blah, blah, blah. You know what janitors do? They have access to every office. And if there's a master program on every computer that the big boss wants to exist, the janitor would be the one who would be in on potentially, he would be like a spy within the workplace or the institute, okay, or the research center, whatever it is. And since when are janitors this savvy? And why is there a damn janitor from up north? Because the guy had kind of like a New York accent, not strong, but there was something there. He didn't talk. He was very like methodical with his words. He didn't talk loud. He was very soft-spoken, very peaceful, thought a lot before he said a single word. Very calculated dude. why would this guy have time to come talk to me if he's not even interested in really buying one of the products that I have for sale? Like, what the fuck is he there for? So when he left, it was silence in the workplace. Everybody just kind of sat there and looked at the floor and was thinking, we were all thinking the same thing. And I finally break the ice and I said, if that doesn't tell you that I might be onto something, I don't know what would. And they all said, we agree. And these are guys who give me a hard time normally, okay? They normally make fun of me in a fun way, but they would make fun of me and stuff, and I didn't care. I just roll with it. I don't mind being made fun of, on certain things. I get it. When I'm over the top on certain things. And these guys were all like, dude, that guy was here for you. And I was like, I get it. And they're like, we're starting to think you're onto something. So obviously the word Rothschild is a big red flag, okay? Obviously that I can no longer find the same group thing that I used to be able to find. By the way, this is in the year 2000, probably 17, 18, somewhere in there. Okay, so anyway. So I've got witnesses to this. This happened. So I started kind of taking it easy about broadcasting what I knew across social media and started just kind of taking it easy, but it didn't mean that I ever stopped thinking about what's going on. And all I can say is it's my perception, my view, that this whole thing is much simpler than it's being portrayed to be. And when I get into explaining how living a lot longer is potentially a whole lot simpler than people make it out to be, I believe that that is a very dangerous venture for me to venture down, because let's say that you even erase the elites and you say, okay, Brandon, expose the elites and we, the public, will stop them from stopping you and blah, 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 and then we'll venture down this road and we're going to figure it all out together. Again, I gave you guys the analogy of the jealousy factor that soon exists from people who have access to weapons, whether they know how to build them, whether they figure out how to build them, whether they have access to weapons that are already built. These people who feel that they have little to lose and a ton to gain because they have a wild imagination of, once I get this, this, and this, I'm going to be, unstoppable. Life's going to be so much better. We all end up in huge danger very, very quickly. So with that said, do you see why it's potentially possible that there are certain agendas to keep certain things secret, okay, to keep this world safe? Enter the men in black again. You say, why do these guys suppress things, blah, blah, blah? What if it's all for the greater good that they're suppressing it? What if people who have lived for a very long time, let's say that there's immortals for a second and they have UFOs, instead of Corvettes, they've got the UFOs. And let's say that these immortals with the UFOs, who can come and go as they please, and they just do most of their hanging out underneath the ocean because that protects them from radiation, which allows them to maintain their immortality better, okay? Let's say that these immortals have seen enough civilizations rise and fall, that they've come to the conclusion that it's pretty much a trade-off of, if you're going to have immortality out in the open, you're going to have societal collapse, and you're only going to end up with 0.01% of the population still being alive. Forget trying to describe what that 0.01% of the population attributes on average are as far as mentality goes. Let's just say that on average, everybody else just gets into, everything goes back to barbarianism, everything falls apart because you just have person after person after person saying, I want to be the next guy who threatens to get $1 million. I want to be the next guy who ransoms to get $1 million. I'm going to be the next guy who ransoms to get $1 million. And society just falls into that. It's just never ending ransoming to get the money. Okay. From 8 billion people, just bing, 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 like clockwork. Everybody's like, well, fuck, I'm going to do it then. I'm going to do it then. I'm going to do it then. Because the billionaire paid the guy's ransom, because the billionaire didn't want his house to get blown up. Okay. It's worth more than what the guy's ransom was. Okay. So, and the billionaire just thought it was the right thing to do. So the US government says, we're not going to negotiate with terrorists, but the billionaire is like, fuck it. It's like a penny to me. I'm going to fucking give the guy his money and be done. Let's get the fuck on with life. So the point is, as an immortal, you come to the conclusions that you either have a society where it's one or the other. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You either have a society where people are not pursuing longer immortality right now because they just genuinely believe it's impossible, and or they just know that they're not in the position to do it because they have the belief that if it's possible, some research center somewhere is going to figure it out, okay? And therefore it's not worth their time to investigate or even discuss. So let's get back to talking about Michael Jackson and Britney Spears conspiracies instead. But the point is, you come to the conclusion that society's either in that mode, and we can have 8 billion people, and next thing you know, you just have all this variety, all these different kinds of cars, all these different kinds of music, all these different kinds of food, all these different kinds of entertainment, all these different kinds of art, okay, all these things going on. It's stimulation. It's something instead of nothing. Because if you're an immortal, you know what black space is all about. You know what it's like to traverse across nothingness in your UFO and know that you're running out of food, running out of oxygen, running out of this, running out of that, running out of everything, let alone entertainment, okay? Let alone somebody to talk to, okay? You know what nothing is all about. You know what immortality with nothing is all about. And you've been down that road and it's very boring. So you're willing to roll the dice. To you, it's like a game. Let's see. It's like balancing. It's like you're bored at your desk and you have a deck of cards and you play a game where you want to balance the cards without the cards falling over and build these big elaborate towers that could be knocked over at any second. That is what society is to you. It's something instead of nothing. It's a game. And you know that everybody's dumb as fuck. And that's part of the plan. You don't need people to be venturing down these certain avenues that are, quote unquote, mass destruction avenues if society ventures down them. You see what I'm saying? So you already know the don'ts. So at that point, things like the Crusades make perfect sense. You show up and you destroy all the literature that the quote unquote democracies, like the Greece democracy, Theora Naturalis, the books that Nikola Tesla reads, okay, to find his deeper understandings of physics and Newton and all these things. And you want to implement the Dark Ages. You want to bring people back to scientific illiteracy. You want to get people as far away from the finish line as possible so that the race can continue. It'd be like taking a poll mid-race during the 24-hour of Le Mans. And you tell the drivers, look, guys, if somebody wins this race, this whole entire racetrack is going to be blown up because there's a terrorist. And they threatened that at the end of the 24-hour Le Mans, if they haven't been paid yet, that everything's going to get blown up. So we have an idea. We're going to extend the race. And by the way, do you guys like racing? Yeah. If your team can provide you with the tires and the supplies, and Michelin and Brembo with the brake pads and everything can supply you with unlimited supplies, are you guys willing to keep racing and taking turns driving the cars? And we have multiple drivers where you get to take a nap and this guy gets to drive and take a nap. If you're a race car driver, you're like, fuck yeah, this is heaven. Because when you're not racing as a race car driver, you're bored. Okay, when you're not going fast as a race car driver, you can be bored. Okay, so racing is the highlight of your month, of your week. That's what you're there for. Okay, that's what got you into that position in the first place. So the human race, if you know that the quote unquote finish line results in just this planet going up in smoke, you start to become aware that keeping people as far away from the finish to keep the race going becomes the agenda. And now all these quote unquote evil people who are providing resistance against humanity making technological breakthroughs, these people who are lockboxing patents and keeping everything secret, now all of these people suddenly make perfect sense. And whether they know what they're doing or not, or whether they're just part of a pyramid of control from somebody higher up, you start to understand why they would go through the elaborate efforts to derail humanity into bogus physics that keeps people from figuring out the super weapons as easily. You'd start to understand why they're derailing humanity from understanding why the mice at Harvard were able to be kept younger and why they go out of their way to visit onesie-twosie people like myself and make sure that we know that mice are definitely different than humans, and you can just completely forget about the idea because it's obviously not possible. So it's just not even worth talking about, right? So there's much better things in a day to discuss. So this is what I believe that true enlightenment's about. And those of you who might already be enlightened and you say, holy shit, this guy's telling the secrets. I've never been sworn to secrecy. I figured all this out on my own. So now I'll bring in the prophecies that every 2,000-ish years, there'd be a new zodiac guy who shows up. First you have Taurus, then you have Aries, then you have Pisces, and now it's the time of Aquarius. So it's kind of like this thing where it's like proof that there is a higher power, or at least somebody who has access to a time machine, to predict that there's going to be a dude every 2,000-ish years who is self-enlightened. That's the key, self-enlightened. He does it on his own without being taught and sworn to secrecy. And now we're coming into the time of Aquarius. What are the odds that the guy who figures all this stuff out, who figures out the currency, who figures out the living longer stuff, who figures out why it's all a bad idea, who just starts teaching everybody everything so that everybody can start to see through the magic trick of life as we know it that keeps this world in one piece? What happens when you know that this guy is coming? Because you either have divine revelation from God of the universe, or the universe itself, maybe something, or you have access to an actual time machine and you know that this guy is how it ends because he starts teaching people things. You start to realize that it would be in your greatest interest to say that this guy is Satan, because what is the definition of evil? The path to destruction. This guy is busting the magic tricks that prevent the world from being destroyed. He's rubbing in everybody's faces how dumb they all are because he doesn't like to be disrespected as the dumb one, simply because he's surrounded by a bunch of people who don't see through the magic tricks themselves, who all insist that he's a total fucking quackpot, okay? Because he's sitting there saying that he sees through the mistakes that Einstein made. He sees through what Tesla was trying to convince Einstein of. He sees through all these different things. So if this isn't Intelligent Life's first rodeo, this task force is going to be very good at trying to keep certain things secret, okay? They're going to be very clever at keeping the secrets and telling certain lies and distracting everybody with total fucking bullshit. So that's long enough for that video. That's 40 minutes. We'll continue later. You starting to realize who you might be watching right now? Like, do you understand there's a prophecy that 666 is going to be in the guy's name and my initials are lowercase BBB because uppercase BBB was already taken by the Better Business Bureau. They've already trademarked that. I am an Aquarius. I was supposed to be 29 years old in the year 2012. I match up with every fucking prophecy about the next guy who shows up. And I'm not trying to say that in a braggy, arrogant way. I'm trying to say that in a, what the fuck is going on right now? Am I in a video game? Is this even real? What the fuck is going on? What am I supposed to do? Is the moral, which I've considered this heavily, and I'm very aware that this could be the moral, is the moral that, you know, if you appreciate things as they are, you'll allow the game to continue as it is, and you'll trust that things are going to be taken care of by people in higher places, and just find out what you're passionate about that doesn't involve you trying to rewrite the games of life, if you will. And for me, that's Corvettes, I guess. So now you can start to understand why, if a person like myself has these other beliefs about what's possible, you say to yourself, well, then why isn't this dude working on that shit when it could yield him millions and billions and trillions of dollars? And why in the hell is he just trying to make a fucking Corvette handle properly? Okay? Like, what's this guy doing? Maybe I'm starting to make a little bit more sense now to some of you. See ya.